Thanking God as usual. Let's call it Jeremiah 36. Obeyed not so much, as we're going to get a chance to see in this chapter, another example of a righteous and faithful individual, like we saw with the Rechabites. But in contrast, we're going to see the line of the king come to an end, or the end of that line prophecy, because they're going to obey not so much, like we saw the Rechabites in the previous chapter. In this chapter that says that king is Jehoiakim, and in the 5th year of his reign, the first 3 verses are going to tell us that God told Jeremiah to have all the words that he has said to Jeremiah written down so that they can be read to the king and to the people, so that they hopefully will seek repentance or a change in the habits that are getting them destroyed. Verses 4 through 8 are going to find Jeremiah calling Baruch, a scribe, or not really a formal scribe, but a secretary. I think he's going to be described in this chapter. Write the words and serve as Jeremiah's proxy, because Jeremiah, if he's not formally locked up, is pretty much locked up and not able to move about, not able to move about freely on his own. And so Baruch is going to agree to take the job. It's going to prove to be a dangerous job, as the chapter will show us, because after he takes the words that he has written and he goes further to read them in the presence of all that he has been commanded to read them in front of, he is going to be told to hide, because they realize that even though not everyone wants to kill him because of the prophecy, some will. And so those who are sympathetic to he and Jeremiah tell them to go hide, while they try to go head off the backlash that inevitably seems on deck, because they are not going to want to keep the words secret. And so they are going to seem to read them or have them read in front of another group of officials, who are eventually going to have them read to the king. Verses 9 and 10 saying, once again, in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, during a fast that was proclaimed. It's when those words, I think, were first read, and then eventually that sets off the chain of events that has the hiding of Baruch and Jeremiah, and then the progressive reading of the words until it finally reaches the ears of the king. Verses 11 through 19, showing the progression of the additional readings, at which point verses 20 through 26 find the scroll eventually being read to the king, King Jehoiakim, who, as certain pages or portions are read, he's going to have them torn off and thrown into the fire until the entire scroll is burned, even though some of the officials cautioned him not to burn the words of God. Verses 27 through 32, the end of the chapter, showing that God will have them write an additional scroll with the words he included before and some additional bonus tracks, for lack of a better term, but additional words that he didn't include before. And if they didn't already know, this time the word of the Lord is going to include additional information regarding the end of King Jehoiakim, who has now earned his entire line, death, away from Jerusalem. Understanding that the captivity is only going to be 70 years, he and his line is going to end in Babylon, never to return and see Judah again. This chapter showing us King Jehoiakim's line as, at least to me, an interesting contrast to the Rechabites and even Baruch, a lowly secretary in Judah. And even though it won't say it in this chapter, Baruch, like the Rechabites, seems to be another individual to whom God will extend an offer of his life as the prize of war, it'll be called later on, if this is in fact the same Baruch, or probably more appropriately pronounced Baruch. Either way, I don't know the right pronunciation, but I do know that Baruch and the Rechabites are an interesting contrast to the king, who in flexing his freedom proved self-destructive. Understanding that even if we get over the liability to freedom that we saw in the last chapter, meaning Bob Dylan's song reminded us that you're going to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. And between those extremes, we have lesser powers that are still in life, more powerful than us. But even if you rise to a position where you are more powerful than anybody else in your sphere, you still have the very real human limitation of human vision, as the king of Judah finds out here. See, he's overcome that power differential, see, because as far as he can see, he's the most powerful man around. Of course, notwithstanding the king of Babylon. However, his limited vision didn't allow him to see that the things that he thought he wanted were ultimately self-destructive. Reminding us again of one of those inescapable realities of life that no matter how high we climb in life, we still never get to see very far. Reminding us of why both Bob Dylan and the Lord caution us to choose wisely because we're going to have to serve somebody.